Hi, welcome to this live stream. This is Mr. Chow from EnglishTuition.org. Now, since this is a live stream, this is happening live. I'm recording this live, so please forgive me if I make any mistakes. This is not an edited video, all right? So I'm going to do a 1 hour lesson live, okay, on video, just to go through the PSLE open-ended close passage. We're going to do a deep dive, all right? So what you might need is maybe some writing paper, a notebook, and just a pen or a pencil, and hopefully you can join in the lesson. So what's going to happen for this particular lesson is that I'm just going to spend the first section of the lesson, which is about maybe 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, just to go through the essential skills of that are needed to do well in the open-ended close passage. So when I run through these skills, I have prepared about 6 passages, right? Very short passages. Each passage will have 2 blanks, okay? So I'm hoping that anyone viewing this video can participate in the lesson as well. So I'm going to put a timer, right? With each exercise, I'm going to give the viewer about 5 minutes for each passage. And then after that, I'll review the answers and I will go through the answers, right? And I will hopefully be able to demonstrate how the skills are being applied to the closed passages, all right? So with that said, let's get started with the skills. Well, first of all, just as a reminder, right, what is the closed passage about? And this is can be a rather challenging exercise for many students. Now, why is that so? It's a 15 marks component. There are 15 blanks there's a typo, with no helping words, okay? 0 helping words at all. That's why many students struggle, right? So especially those students who come from primary 3, primary 4, and they're very used to, worksheets or practices that give them a lot of helping words, all right? But when they go to primary 5, primary 6, and this is the exercise that has got 0 helping words, right? It's not MCQ, okay? There's no 1, 2, 3, 4 for you to choose, okay? So you're supposed to come up with the answer. So what students need to do is that they find that they suddenly have to rely, right, on a combination of skills, which we are going to go into, in order to do well in this particular exercise. So what are those skills? So we are going to introduce the closed passage skills right now. Skill number 1, contextual skills, right? So this means that students are supposed to look for clues within the passage itself. You probably heard about these skills from a previous video of mine or from some other videos, right? But what does it really mean? We'll look at this later when we do the practice, all right? So students need to imagine that you are a language detective, okay? So in order to arrive at the correct answer, you want to look for clues, right? So in effect, when I teach my students, I want my students to show me exactly how they arrive at the answer, which are the clues, right? So I want to see the working. Did they underline the clue? Did they circle the clue? Did they draw an arrow, right? This clue leads to this answer, okay? So I want to see the working. Otherwise, you're just guessing, and most of the time your answers could be wrong, all right? So you're searching for clues that point you to the correct answer. So what this means is that you should read the surrounding text very carefully, like a detective, and look for clues and not jump to conclusion. So you're a bad detective if you jump to conclusion, all right, without looking for clues, right? You look at a murder victim and then suddenly you say, oh no, so and so is the murderer, okay? And you're just guessing, all right? And you have no evidence at all, okay? So you need to look for clues before you jump to conclusions. So skill number 2 is that students need to rely on their grammar and their range of vocabulary to find the most suitable word. So I will say this up front. This is a language paper, so your grammar and vocab is being tested everywhere in every section of the exam paper, right? So this is nothing new, okay? So for those students who are not familiar with the grammar rules, then it's very unlikely that you will do well in this particular section. And for those students who don't like to read, who don't pick up vocab here and there, then they have weak vocab, right? So, and you want to come up with those words on your own, it's going to be a real struggle, okay? So it's about knowing what type of word, right, that goes where in the sentence. And this type of knowledge will help you in the closed passage, right? And knowing the right tense to use. So you might know that this is an action word, this is a verb that goes into the sentence just based on the position, right? But you chose the wrong tense, okay? Or spell it wrongly, so you still get 0, right, for that blank. So having a wide range of vocabulary certainly helps. And that brings us to the third skill. Now, third skill is about collocation, right? Meaning knowing the most common phrases. So another way to explain this is that sometimes we call this the fixed phrase, right? So this phrase has been used quite commonly. And if you come across these phrases while you're reading some stories or news articles or whatever, then this becomes very easy if the phrase appears in the closed passage. All right. So in effect, you already know the words in the given phrase because you've seen it before somewhere, right? For example, right, the early bird catches the what worm, and everybody knows this, right? The what skinniest worm? No, the fattest worm. Okay, so reading widely certainly helps. All right, so your vocab, right, collocation, and this is the fastest way to arrive at the answer. Okay, because you don't even have to look for clues. You already know the phrase. All right. And working on, just practice, right, on closed passage. This certainly helps as well. Okay. So with that said, we're going to look at an actual example, right? Like I said, we're going to look through 6 passages, right? So here is the passage number 1, the abandoned house. The focus for this passage on contextual clues and vocabulary. All right, I'm going to read you the passage. Then after that, I'm going to set a timer and you try to arrive at the correct answer, okay? The old mansion at the end of the street had been vacant for decades. Its windows were covered in thick layers of dust and the garden was blank with thorny weeds. Most neighbors avoided the place, claiming it was haunted. However, a group of brave teenagers decided to blank the property one Friday night. Armed with only flashlights, they pushed open the creaking iron gates. Okay, let me try to set the timer. Okay, you should be able to see the timer on screen right now. 5 minutes. Try to work out the answer before I stop the timer, and then we will go through the answers together. So ideally, as you work through the exercise, you also, besides writing down the answer, you also want to write down the clues so that you can convince yourself that, hey, I'm actually learning the skills and putting the skills into practice. All right. For those students who don't like to write down the clues, right, they are not doing the working, and as a result, they often get very inconsistent answers, inconsistent grades. Okay, so do the working, make it a habit, and you will improve, right, with the closed passage. You have a minute left. Thirty seconds. And time's up. Alright, so I'm going to remove the timer from the screen and let's go back to our PowerPoint slides. Okay, let's look at the example, right? The answer to the first passage, right, of the example, the abandoned house. Alright, the old mansion at the end of the street has been vacant for decades. Its windows were covered in thick layers of dust and the garden was, answer, overgrown. Okay, with thorny weeds. So what is the clue, right? The clue is right here. Thorny weeds, right? And how do we know the answer is overgrown? Here's another clue: thick layers, okay, of dust, right? Vacant for decades. All right. So this suggests that it has not been maintained for a very long time. And therefore, there's a very good chance that the thorny weeds has grown out of hand. So the first idea that occurs to you, right, is the word grow, right? So now you need to find a way, okay, to fit this word into the sentence, right? So you know that, it has grown excessively, so we add overgrown, right? And because we see the verb was here, the right form of the word is overgrown. Okay, so that's how we arrive at this answer with the working. Okay, so most neighbors avoided the place, claiming it was haunted. However, a group of brave teenagers decided to enter the property one Friday night. Right? How do we know the answer is enter? Right? So here's the clue. Right? They armed with flashlights, they push open the creaking iron gates, right, which suggests that they wanted to go into the property. All right, so go into, right, but go into, these are two words, right? So this may be the first words that come to your mind, but we cannot have two words, in one blank. Okay, and I've seen students who just force the words into the blank. All right, they put two words right into the blank, and of course they got the wrong answer. All right, so if this is what occurs to you, then you need to think harder, right, to change this to one single word, right? And another clue, right, for grammar is, you see the preposition to here, and this is commonly followed by the verb, right? And we know that the verb is an action word. All right, so what is the action that they wish to perform one Friday night? You ask yourself this question and you will get the answer, right, which is to enter the property. Okay, and after the preposition to, we also know that this word cannot have tense. So if for some reason you're going to add an ed, you going to add some kind of tense here, you're going to get a correct the answer wrong. Okay, so do not change the base form of this word, do not add any tense to it, and you will get the correct answer. Okay, so let's move on to the next example. Passage number 2, the school project. Again, we're going to have two blanks. The focus is on co-location and logic. The students were told to work in pairs to complete their science experiment. Each group had to blank a hypothesis before they could begin their observations. Sarah and Tim spent hours researching their topic at the library. After gathering enough data, they managed to blank to a logical conclusion. Their hard work paid off when they received the highest grade in class. So once again, I'm going to start the timer, right? You should see on screen right now, 5 minutes. Read the passage on your own and try to come up with the correct answers. 5 minutes, all right? Start now. Already started. Let's try your best. You have 1 minute left. I hope you're doing well and able to work out the answers. 3, 2, 1, and that's it. 5 minutes, right? So let's go back to our slides, all right, and we'll look at the answers. So answers for passage 2. Okay, the students were told to work in pairs to complete their science experiment. Each group had to formulate, develop, propose, or suggest a hypothesis, right? This is the clue, right? Before they could begin their observations. So Sarah and Tim spent hours researching their topic at the library. After gathering enough data, they managed to come to a logical conclusion. Their hard work paid off when they received the highest grade in class. So as you can see, the answer for the the first blank, there could be multiple answers, right? So formulate, develop, propose, and suggest. And this is something that I teach my students as well, right? Remember, you're not supposed to jump to the first word that comes to your head. So unless you're super confident, right? You're 1000% confident that is the correct answer. Otherwise, you need to think through and give yourself some options, right? In other words, since it's not an MCQ, right? They never give you any options. You have to give yourself some options. So in this case, they will accept all reasonable answers, right? So let's say I come up with the word, could it be formulate? But I'm not so sure, right? So maybe I think, maybe develop could be an answer, or suggest could be an answer, right? So now I have 3 options instead of just 1. And then again, you ask yourself, right, which do you think is the most suitable answer? Now, in this particular case, they will accept all 3. But let's say you say, okay, formulate, but you're not very sure of the spelling, right? But now you have a choice, okay? So since you're not so sure of the word, how to spell the word formulate, you may decide that, okay, I just want to use the word suggest, all right? I think everybody knows how to spell suggest, okay? So this is the benefit of coming out with options for yourself, and it is a very important skill in the closed passage. So for those students who jump to conclusions, who don't give themselves options, they are more likely to make careless mistakes, all right? Because they have not thought it through, right? They have not given themselves the time to work out the answers, right? To use the logic, okay? Apply some logic to work out the answers. Now, as for the second answer, come to a logical conclusion, right? So I think you can use collocation, meaning that, this kind of like a fixed phrase, come to a logical conclusion, come to a conclusion. We've seen this phrase very often, it's very commonly used, so we choose the answer as come to. Now, some of the students may ask, right, can we choose arrive to a conclusion, right? And I wouldn't suggest this, because I think the right preposition to use is arrive at a logical conclusion, right? So maybe, right, there could be a chance that arrive to is correct, right? But you're not sure because it's different from the phrases that you have read in the past, all right? So then come would be a better candidate for the answer, because come has a higher percentage chance that you will get correct, okay, compared to arrive, all right? So again, there is a little bit of effort to consider which is the most suitable answer when it comes to choosing the right one. So we want to go through this process all the time, right? The 15 blanks in the closed passage, we keep going back all the time, right? Coming up with options, not jumping to conclusions, looking for contextual clues, using grammar, vocab, collocation, and a bit of logic to arrive at the correct answer. I hope you get a sense of the amount of effort that we need to put in order to score well for the closed passage, right? This is not an easy exercise, I repeat. So do not underestimate and just say, oh, I just want to quickly, fill in all the blanks and that's it, goodbye, thanks, okay? You're not going to do well, okay? So with that said, let's move on to the next example. Passage 3 teaches about a sudden downpour, right? So this is the focus on phrasal verbs and connectors. Dark clouds gathered quickly, casting a shadow over the bustling city. Without warning, the heavens opened and a blank, right, downpour began. Pedestrians scrambled to find shelter under nearby shop awnings to avoid getting drenched. Many people have been caught blank guard because the morning weather had been perfectly clear. Within minutes, the streets were flooded with rushing water. All right, so I'll leave you to work out the answers on your own for the next 5 minutes. So here is the timer. All right, so once again, do your best. All right, don't wait for me to tell you all the answers. All right, you want to be able to come up with the answers on your own, especially during the exams or your tests or your school tests, right? One minute left. Okay, time's up. So let's go back to our PowerPoint slides and look at the answers, right? So third passage. Dark clouds gathered quickly, casting a shadow over the bustling city. Now the heavens open, right? So this is my clue. So now another term, I don't know whether you're aware, another term for OE cloze is that this is a comprehension cloze, right? Meaning you're supposed to use the context and try to understand the context before you can arrive at the correct answer. Okay, so if you read the words and they don't mean anything to you, then you're in trouble, right? So when the heavens open, what do you think is going to happen to the downpour? Again, vocab, you need to know what's the downpour, right? Okay, it's just rain. And if you think about it, when the heavens open, what happened to the downpour, right? Am I going to just get a little bit of rain, or would I get a lot of rain? Okay, so now I have some options, right? We were talking about options just now. So would the rain be just a slight drizzle, right? Or would it be heavy rain? Okay, and in this particular instance, once you consider the strength and you come up with the right word, you already have the correct answer, right? For those with better vocab and you want to use the word torrential rain, right? This is also the correct answer, right? So I think one of the consideration that many students fail, right, to think about is the intensity of the word, right? And in this particular example, well, they've given us this classic example, right? Heavens open. Heavens open, right? It is a very strong phenomenon, right? So of course we're going to choose a word that has got very heavy intensity, okay? So what happened, right? Next, the pedestrian scrambled to find, so it has to be very heavy rain, right? So why would people scramble? To find shelter under nearby shop awnings to avoid getting drenched. So many people have been caught off guard, right? Caught off guard. And I would maybe classify this as collocation, right? Because this is a very commonly used fixed phrase, right? Caught off guard, okay? Because the morning weather had been perfectly clear. So within minutes, the streets were flooded with rushing water, okay? So I don't think this is a very, difficult exercise. So as long as you pay attention and you apply the skills, right, and you do it with comprehension, you do it with understanding, right, it should be quite straightforward. Okay, so let's quickly move on to passage number 4, the plastic free campaign. Okay, and this focuses on phrasal verbs and quantifiers. To reduce environmental waste, the school decided to blank down, okay, on the use of single-use plastic in the canteen. Students were encouraged to bring their own reusable containers for lunch. At first, many found it inconvenient, but they soon blank into the habit of being eco-friendly. By the end of the term, the amount of plastic trash collected had decreased significantly. All right, so as usual, I will put on the timer, and then you can start working on the exercise and see if you can arrive at the correct answer. 5 minutes already started, so let's go. So if just joined us, all right, we are doing a closed passage practice. So what's happening is that, now we have the timer on screen, and for our viewers, they can work on the exercise before I give my explanation. last 2 minutes. Final 30 seconds. I hope you have arrived at the answers by now, right? Maybe selecting your final answer. And time's up, right? So once again, let's move back to our slides, right? And we can go through the answers together. So to reduce environmental waste, the school decided to cut down, okay? So now this answer here, cut down, is a phrasal verb. Now phrasal verb is a little bit funny, right? Because it consists of a verb with a preposition. So when you combine the two together, it becomes a phrasal verb, right? However, a lot of students do not pick up the phrasal verbs, right? We don't learn phrasal verbs like we learn vocabulary. So in primary school, most of my students just learn a little bit, okay, just a few, right, phrasal verbs. Maybe cut down is one of them, all right? And that's it, right? So if they don't pick up phrasal verbs on their own, through their own reading, they're not expanding, right? And there are hundreds and up to, I think, even thousands, right, of phrasal verbs, and they're very commonly used. So think of phrasal verbs as vocabulary, right? When you learn phrasal verbs, in fact, my students, they do get phrasal verbs worksheets on a regular basis to expand on their phrasal verbs, okay? You do realize that when you add a verb and a preposition together, sometimes the meaning change entirely. So it's like building up your vocabulary, okay? That's my point, all right? So if you know the phrasal verb, then this is very easy. Cut down on the use, right? Otherwise, you might come up with other words like, I don't know, reduce down, but then it doesn't make any sense, and this is the wrong answer, okay? So let's move on. Now, students were encouraged to bring their own reusable containers for lunch. At first, many found it inconvenient, but they soon got into the habit of being eco-friendly. Right? By the end of the term, the amount of plastic trash collected had decreased significantly. So I think most people will be able to get this as the correct answer. No, I got into the habit of doing something, right? And again, maybe a little bit of co-location as well. I got into the habit, right? I started into the habit of something, okay? You know, like even prepositions like this, all right? Or I could erase the blank here, right? And put my blank here, right? Then what do, right? They soon got into the habit blank being friendly, being eco-friendly. Then we have to make a guess again, right? So for those who are good, you automatically fill in the blank. using your collocation skills, all right, with the preposition of. So that is the major advantage that a lot of these students have if you are well read, right? I'm saying all this to encourage you to read more, okay, to practice more. Otherwise, there's no way you're going to improve your close passage. All right. So we have a couple of passages to go through. So let's not spend too much time and move on to the next slide. Passage number 5, the honest mistake, connectors and fixed phrases. While playing soccer in the backyard, Jeremy accidentally kicked the ball through the neighbor's window. He was tempted to run away and hide. Blank, his conscience would not let him. Instead, he walked to the neighbor's front door to blank responsibility for his actions. To his surprise, the neighbor was not angry but praised him for his integrity. All right. I know you may have some ideas in your head, so let's very quickly start our timer. There you go. It's on screen. 5 minutes. Okay, quick 5 minutes. Do your working. Write down the answers. Maybe at the side. Right, on your notebook or paper, whatever you have. Write down the clues as well, right? How you arrive at the answer. Okay, write down the options, right? If you have a few before you fill in the final answer. Okay. last 10 seconds. Okay, and we're done. So let's move back to our PowerPoint slides. This time, instead of looking at the answer, let's try to work out the answers on our own, right? Before I show you the answers. So while playing soccer in the backyard, Jeremy accidentally kicked the ball through the neighbor's window. He was tempted to run away and hide. Blank, his conscience would not let him. So based on the clue here, right, we know that he's tempted to run away, and then the next clause say maybe not, right? Want to run away, maybe not. Want to run away, maybe not. Excuse me. So these are opposite ideas, right? So when you have opposite ideas in the same sentence, usually what we do is we use what we call a contrast connector. So this is using your grammar to help you. Okay, what's the contrast connector? Now the very first one that comes to mind is of course but, right? This is the most basic ones. But, okay, another contrast connector is yet, right? And then another one is however. Okay, so but we know that however can only be used at the beginning of a sentence, and this is not a full stop but a comma, so this is out. So that leaves us with but and yet. All right, so I'm going to choose just one of them as my answer, right? But his conscience would not let him. Next, instead he walked to the neighbor's front door to blank responsibility for his actions. So we're going to use a bit of a fixed phrase here. So we usually say we take responsibilities for our actions, right? Okay, or we accept responsibility for our actions, right? And pay attention to, there's a to here, so we cannot apply any tense here. So what I'm going to do is just to accept this as my answer, right? Maybe I pick this, take. To take responsibility for his actions. So I'm happy with the reasoning, and I'll leave that as my answers. Now let's check my answers, right? So the answers for number 9, but yet, okay, is correct. And the answers for number 10, take, accept responsibility for his actions, that's correct as well. Okay, so at least we are able to earn 2 marks from this example, passage 5. Okay, now we just have one more passage to practice. So hopefully you are keeping score. All right, and then we'll end this live stream by looking at some personal targets and leaving you with some final tips, right? But we are not at the end yet, so just keep watching, right? So the last example that we have, passage 6, the rise of AI, focus, global context, and semantic grouping. Now, artificial intelligence has transformed the way we live and work in the 21st century. From voice assistants to self-driving cars, these blank are becoming more integrated into our daily routines. While some fear that robots might replace human jobs, others believe that technology will blank our lives by making tasks more efficient, right? So before I give you the answers, I'm going to start the timer again. 5 minutes, there you go. All right. So I think by now, at least you should get a pretty good idea of how to arrive at the answers based on my explanations, based on my walkthrough. All right. So hopefully you're able to get the final 2 answers on your own independently, right? The goal of this entire lesson, the objective, is to give you the skills so that you can do this independently, right? Don't always, have to rely on others to give you the answers, right? Don't always have to rely on answer sheets or your tutors or your teachers. Exam, you're supposed to do this on your own, okay? Okay, final 1 minute. This is the final example, guys, so make it count. If you have not arrived at the answer, try harder. All right, sometimes you find that you give yourself a little bit more time, just that 30 seconds, or 1 minute, you're able to arrive at the answer. But if you give up, right, and a lot of students just tend to give up too easily, okay, then it's 100% 0 marks. Okay, if you keep doing that for the entire exercise, you're going to fail. All right, so don't give up too easily. Okay, just try. Okay, and that's the end of our 5 minutes. So let's move back to the PowerPoint slide as usual, right? Not as usual, right? Just same as the last example. We're going to try to come up with the answers before I flash the answers to you. So artificial intelligence has transformed the way we live and work in the 21st century, from voice assistants to self-driving cars. So what are these? What do you call this? Voice assistants, right? Self-driving cars. Do we call these tools? Right? Maybe this is the first word that popped into my head, but is that the correct answer? All right. I remember the closed passage. You're supposed to find the most suitable word, right? So, how about technologies? Right? Okay. And I think voice assistants, self-driving cars, there's something to do with tech, so technologies or innovations, right? Maybe there's something new. Or inventions, right? If I think of something new, I think of inventions. So which do you think is the correct answer, right? So if I am the most comfortable with the word technology, so because I don't think they're new anymore, right? So just put down technologies, right? So these technologies are becoming more integrated into our daily routines. While some fear that robots might replace human jobs, others believe that technology will blank. So we have a contrast connector here, right? So replace human jobs there's a negative connotation. So then this word over here is likely to be positive, right? Simply because, how do you know, right? Simply because there's a contrast connector. So if this is negative, this has to be positive, right? So others believe that technology will blank our lives by making tasks more efficient. So this is another clue. More efficient, generally speaking, is better for our lives, right? So again, this has a positive connotation. So we are looking to fill in with a positive word. So using co-location, maybe, okay, the first word that pops into my head is improve, will improve our lives. Okay, well, if you write degrade, okay, this is a negative word, but we are not looking for negative words, right? We are looking for positive words, right? So having the understanding actually helps you to narrow down your options and zoom in on the answers, right? But let's say maybe you have a different word, right? And you have enriched our lives, okay? So which is a better answer? I don't know, right? And depending on your preference, you might choose improve or you might choose enrich, okay? And then that's your answer, all right? So let's look at whether those answers are correct or not. So the answer for 11, from voice assistants to self-driving cars, these technologies, innovations, inventions. So yeah, we are correct, all right? And answers for number 12, technology will continue to improve, enhance, or enrich. Okay, notice that I never write down the word enhance just now, all right? Which is another way of saying that is to improve our life. So all these options are all accepted as correct answers, right? So I think some students may be surprised to learn that Wow, there are so many possible answers, right? Now, okay, is that good or bad? I think it's a good thing, right? The important thing is you need to demonstrate that you understood the passage, you understood the context, and that you have the right vocab and grammar to fill in the blanks with the most suitable word. All right, and that's it. That's your job. Okay, so you don't have to overthink the exercise. All right. Now, like I said, okay, we took quite some time to run through the examples, to work on the examples, and for me to explain, right, the answers. All right, hopefully you learned something. We have 6 passages times 2 blanks. That leaves us with 12 blanks. Now the actual exercise has got 15 blanks, okay, more than 12. So you do have to spend a little bit of time, okay, to work on the exercise and come up with correct answers. So let's set some personal targets, right? Level 1, right? If you're a beginner, okay, or you are just really bad at the exercise, right? You can start by trying to aim for up to 5 out of 15, right? But that was still, you're still failing the exercise, right? Maybe still, get an AL6, okay, or maybe below AL6, all right? But it's a start, right? I don't want students to feel discouraged, right? If you're getting 0, 1, and then suddenly you get 3, 4, 5 because you watch this video, I want to encourage you, right? That's a good thing, okay? Next, we move on to level 2, right? And the target becomes 6 to 9 out of 15. Now, 6 to 9, you're already at borderline pass or passing the Cloze exercise. You're still at between AL5 and AL6, right? But you're no longer failing, and you're able to consistently get 6 to 9 marks out of 15, and that in itself, I feel is actually a good improvement, right? If you're coming from 3 marks, 4 marks, and then now you're scoring like 7 marks, 8 marks, 9 marks, okay? Now for the more advanced students, right, we are talking at level 3, right? And you're scoring 10 to 15 out of 15. Is it possible to score full marks for this? Yes, it's very difficult, but not impossible, all right? So these are students looking to score AL4 and above, meaning the old grading system is A or A star, right? Now the target I set for my students mostly is 11, right? I don't need a perfect score, okay? And in fact, most students find it really difficult to get a perfect score, right? But if you're getting like 11, 12 out of 15, that's a really, really good score. And you stand a pretty good chance, right? Getting AL4 and above, maybe even AL3 or AL2, all right? So set some personal targets for yourself and just keep on practicing, right? And here are some final tips, right? The more you practice, the better and the faster you become, right? You don't want to spend all your time just trying to think of the answers. You need to manage the paper as a whole, right? There are still other sections that you need to complete. And don't spend too much time on one blank if you do not know the answer, all right? But having said that, try not to leave any blanks, right? Even if you know the first word is unlikely to be the correct answer, just fill in your closest answer. That's better than leaving a blank, right? Now, arriving at the correct answers requires some effort. You've seen that in this video for yourself, right? So that's a normal thing, okay? Don't rush to fill in the first word that comes to mind, right? That's the best advice I can give you, right? That's the mistake a lot of students make, right? So as a final reminder, you need to improve your grammar and your vocabulary. So, because first, you need to understand the context and the passage. Second, you need to be able to apply the skills that you have learned in this video. What are the 3 skills again? Just a quick recap, right? Collocation, right? You need to know the grammar rules, right? And have a range of vocab, okay? And then finally, be the language detective. Rely on contextual clues, right? So these are the 3 basic skills, right? So at the end of the day, this is a language paper. You need grammar, you need vocab, okay? So you cannot run away from that, all right? So with that said, we've come to the end of today's lesson. You know where to find me, right? For students who wish to sign up for lessons, thank you very much for staying on the stream or watching this video. I think there's no one on the stream, okay? I will see you in the next one. All right, bye bye.